So, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody, wherever in the world you happen to be. My name is Carmen Mazzara, and I serve as your executive director for the Coalition for American Public Diplomacy and Leadership. We at Capital are so glad to have all of you here, and we're particularly excited to have this conversation that we know is critically important to many of you as we look towards another great year of BridgeUSA recruitment. As a couple of quick reminders, we're going to turn the floor over to our wonderful speaker, who's going to also have lots of great questions for you. So I encourage you to keep your cameras on, keep that chat open, and really get engaged to think about the great content we're going to have today. As you know, Capital has members in 44 different countries, and Jenna is an expert in many things, but I don't know if she can give you detailed advice for every single country. So we're going to keep this at the strategic level to help you evaluate your assets and your own work in business and how it makes sense in your markets. This session is part of a longer series of webinars that Capital has, and I invite you to join us next week, March 12th, for our next upcoming session that is looking at the happy topic of helping your BridgeUSA participants with their US taxes. We know that's always something that they struggle with. And we have a great Capital member coming to talk to you about how you make sure they complete everything right, hopefully don't owe the US government any money, and take care of all of the paperwork in the most proper, true, and everything way. This session and that session will live afterwards on the Capital YouTube page. And then, as is our practice, we'll have our quick summary of high points for you available in the member portal as soon as I can get it written and get it done after we finish here today. All of those links, as always, come out in the Friday member email, which hopefully you all receive and have a chance to review. If you have no idea what I'm talking about any of those things, please feel free to send me a message and we'll make sure you get tapped into all of the different resources that Capital has. As we go through the session today, if you have any technical challenges, please feel free to shoot me an email, or excuse me, shoot me a direct message through the system. And I know we're going to have a great chance to have a lot of dialogue through the chat, as well as if you want to raise your hand and all of those other pieces. And so with that very last bit of housekeeping, it gave a few more of our colleagues a chance to get in and get settled. And I am delighted now to turn the floor over to my colleague, Jenna Boig. She is going to introduce herself, but I just want to say that I have known Jenna for a very long time, longer than either of us would probably like to admit. But she is just wonderful, and I'm so glad that she is able to share all of her expertise with us today and help you all plan and think about what this means in your context. And so with that, I am going to stop and turn the floor over to Jenna. And again, make sure you have your chat open because we're going to have lots of great chance for dialogue here today. So Jenna, if you please.
Thank you so much, Carmen. Hello, everybody. So I'm happy to say I'm not here to talk about taxes today. A much more fun topic of storytelling, and how you can all tell your story in the kind of craziness of everything going on right now. So I'm going to go through a bunch of slides, but if you have any questions, definitely going to ask you all some questions. Please feel free to stick it in the chat or raise your hand, or any of that, because I want to make sure this is helpful and interactive for you. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on what we're talking about today. So tell you a little bit about me, of course, and my own story. We're going to talk about storytelling in general and the psychology of what makes up good storytelling, because that is what you all do every single day anyway. You may not realize that's what you're doing, but as you talk to participants, as you talk to different people, as you talk to folks in your everyday life, even personally, you are telling stories, and really kind of what strikes home. Talking about specifically kind of getting heard right now, right? And there's so much noise everywhere right now. How do we do that? A bit about building some trust, right? Things are a little bit uncertain right now, all over the place. And how do we kind of build trust in this climate? And then how to gather stories. I know I have Q&A at the end, but as I said, if you have questions in the middle, please feel free to shout or put them in the chat. We're happy to talk about that. So a quick little bit about me. This is me, and this is my story. So I've been working in marketing and communications, mostly in nonprofits, for my entire career. It's what I love. It's what I am passionate about. I left big corporate world a couple of years ago to start my own company, specifically to work with mission-based organizations and nonprofits. I have a board member for three different amazing nonprofits. I love them all, in the arts, in therapeutic writing, and then also in a really kind of local specific kind of organization that does work with grist milling, which is actually really fascinating. I love, love learning, so I definitely want to hear from you guys. The name of my company is Marigold Consulting because I also love gardening. And marigolds in a garden, their goal is to help gardens thrive and grow. And so that's what I wanted my company to do. As you can see from the photo, that's me. I'm the shortest one in there. And I have two teenagers, both of whom are taller than I am, in that bottom photo. And my husband is all the way to the right. That is us a couple Thanksgivings ago at the Grand Ole Opry. So it was amazing. And I do a lot of traveling. So that is kind of the things of which I really love and enjoy, and I talk about all the time. And then this year, as you can see, for my birthday, I got my very own figurine with me and my computer and my garden all together from my best friend. So that was really fun. And we're going to talk a lot about storytelling. So kind of getting some background on everybody who's on the call, just kind of making sure, we're talking about things that are important to you. I know storytelling matters, right? You already know that talking about the amazing work you do matters. But how do you do that, right? So it's like really great in concept and in theory, and it's super fun, but you are on budgets, you're in a crowded space, and you are working in the actual real world. Sometimes we really sit in conference rooms together and we talk about storytelling, but then we have to get out there and do it. So we're going to talk about that as well. Um, so just a little bit of background. The biggest thing about storytelling, and so I've done work with nonprofits all over the US. And so I say this because I have done this. I have done this a lot. Um, you lead with lots of numbers, right? Like we have helped 300,000 people. We have worked with 100 different farmers in Wisconsin. That's great, but it is actually not the most important thing. What they have found through research on storytelling, and there's all this research that's been done on it, is that it is the emotional pull that actually makes the difference, right? You're hearing someone's experiences. And hearing one person's experiences is actually going to be more relevant and more valuable than hearing from a group of people. So we're going to talk a lot about that today. It's that kind of emotional one person story. The good news for everybody is that means you don't need to talk to hundreds of people. You need to talk to 4 or 5 people a year. Amazing, would be great. And if you can do that, you can get the stories you need to use for a whole year. And this will be kind of something we'll talk about in a bit, but just kind of know it seems really overwhelming when you start to think about like, oh, how am I going to do all of this? Actually, less is more in this situation. Less, better stories, less, more emotional stories is more. And of course, you want them to be relatable, which is why your alumni is going to be the most important people to tell a story, and really inspiring connection. So I'm going to stop for 1 second because my understanding, and I've done some research and talked to Carmen a lot, is that you all are competing kind of in this really, really noisy, huge marketplace. So even just like a 1 or 2 people would kind of share, like when you go out there to start to talk about the work that you're doing, where do you feel the rub? Like where do you get stuck because there's other stuff getting in front of you? I'll let somebody else talk a minute.
Anybody want to raise your hand or put it in the chat?
I guess I can say something to that effect.
Okay.
So just I guess for everyone else's background, I work for an exchange organization in Germany, doing J1 and F1 programs. And for us, one thing that we're really competing with is some organizations that don't fully tell the whole truth in their consultation
Mm.
calls when they're selling. And so it sounds really great for a lot of people looking for an exchange organization. Um, things like only 2% of our students change host families, which we know can't be true because we work with some of the same partner organizations. But naturally, then when they come to us and we say, oh, yeah, it's, closer to 25%, they're like, oh, that scares them. And so it's a lot of things like that that we're kind of coming up against. Yeah, pushback then from clients, customers, because it makes us look like our product is maybe second tier because the competition isn't telling the full truth.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Erin.
Yeah.
It's a really good one. Anybody else before I move on? Okay. We're going to specifically, Erin, actually the topic you just brought up is something we're actually going to address. So that was a great lead in to a slide coming up in a few minutes. Oh, I think Gia has something.
Yes, I just wanted to. Hi, my name is Gia,
Hi.
and I have a recruitment agency based in Hungary, but we work with students all over Europe. And our main focus is the J1 visa internship and training programs. So, in terms of noise, I think the noise that we see is that there are many options for young students and professionals in life in terms of they can go abroad with an Erasmus program in Europe. They can it's fairly easier to go for them to Europe than to the USA, and there are just many options and quite a lot of organizations who offer different kind of exchange programs and different kinds of youth programs. And I think it's hard for the youth sometimes to choose between these programs, and a lot of times they would go with something that is easier, that is an easier and less expensive options. So this is what I wanted to add to the noise that we are competing against right now. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Awesome. Anybody else before I move on? I want to make sure everybody gets a chance. Okay. Well, thank you so much. We're definitely going to talk about that too, and kind of a way to tackle this kind of how do we, why pick us, right? The why pick us idea. So I'm going to go through this slide actually pretty fast because I want to tackle both those things that are coming up. So just a few things to think about also in the world of all of these students, right? The students you're talking about that are getting the different messages from different places, or the families that are hearing from other organizations that maybe aren't so truthful. There's a couple ways to think about it, right? So one of them, especially with all the noise that's going on in social and there's emails everywhere and in the news, is to think about when you're talking to people, what they're actually looking at, like where your audience is, right? So this is just a smaller piece of the kind of bigger pie, but making sure you're actually promoting your stories in the right place. So it's less about storytelling and more about channel strategy. But it is just kind of something to think about as we go through this. It's the idea that, like, if I'm talking to students and I do not know in other countries what social media or other places students are, I have two teenagers in the US. I know where they are all the time. But just to think about that. And also just acknowledging the reality of the fact, which I know you all do, that there are negative headlines. There are things out there. And especially this really good point, Erin, of like, not everyone's telling the truth. That is also a really thing we need to combat, right? And how do we acknowledge that? How do we deal with that situation? And ironically, it comes back to what we were saying earlier, right? Which is finding a couple of really good, generally alumni stories. And alumni can be host families, alumni can be participants, alumni can be anybody, and telling their story and letting them tell their story is going to help the most. And that's what you can kind of see at the bottom. But a part of it is also thinking about, as you're having people tell their stories, how can they help you amplify those stories? Where are the places where they can also share, where they can also do things? And you're all from different places, right? You're from different organizations. Some are recruitment organizations. How can you use the people you interact with every day to also help amplify your story? Can you ask them to, I worked at an organization where, not required, but nicely asked every once in a while, like, hey, we have got this amazing, incredible story coming out. We would love it if everyone would just share it one time for us. That actually will get incredibly far, and further than maybe you guys just constantly trying to push things out. So that's just some food for thought to think about as we go through this. This is my photo of the example of, if you're looking at something, which of these two photos will pull you in more, right? The one with the crowd of people or the one that's the close-up? Because generally it is that one person story, which you're going to hear me say in like 17 different slides. So just be ready for it. So I think this gets to kind of a bit of what Erin was saying, and then generally across a lot of other things as well. Sometimes it's the idea of leading with transparency is kind of the opposite of what you like want to do in your gut, right? You're like, but we are amazing and these people are lying. That is definitely going to be true sometimes. Like we are, but 25% seems to say it seems scarier if everybody else is saying 2%, right? That is like a scary thing. But I love that you guys are honest and lead with transparency and it's something you're aware of, is amazing. So let's say that first, like acknowledge like how great that is. But you also do need to acknowledge it. And it is fair and okay to say, we know this is what other places are saying. And we suggest to you, the person who's looking at this information, to like do a little digging, to like ask for a little information, to ask them to show it to you. Like, that's great that you've heard that. It's okay to say, like, do a little fact checking for yourself too. And to say it as you talk to people, to say as you're doing a presentation, this is what our facts are, this is what we see. Like, we know other people say this, like, check into it a little bit, and that's fine. And you can do that before you kind of start then leading into your story. You want to just kind of cut that at the beginning. We talked a second ago about alumni voices, right? That is going to be the other best way to do that. And again, we're talking about 2 or 3 people. Maybe 4. 4 is amazing. 2 or 3 would be great. 1, I will even take 1 sometimes, but 1 person that can really speak about their experiences and what they got. And that's going to hit both the kind of fact checking issue, and also it's going to hit the kind of why do this program issue. And you want to think when you're writing your stories about acknowledging, like, maybe the person speaking through the story said, I wasn't sure. I looked at all these different places, but I chose here, and here's why. I was nervous about it. That's okay. And here's what I got. So it's that through line of like sharing that and acknowledging that other people have a fear and that other people have a concern, but here's how I moved through that concern. And helping kind of craft that storyline is really helpful because you want people to kind of see themselves in the story that they're hearing. The other piece of it is you do need to continuously tell this story over and over and over again. So it's something I kind of wanted to check in with you guys because I'm learning a lot about the work you do, but I don't know everything, clearly. I'm just learning as I go. How do you currently stay in touch with people, like folks who get accepted, like participants or families or organizations? How do you stay in touch with them? Like, how often do you talk to them? How do you talk to them? If somebody would share that. That would be super, super helpful. Anyone?
Go ahead, Gia.
Hi, it's me again.
Thanks, Gia.
So you were asking how we are currently staying in touch between the acceptance and departure. And in our case, this is when someone gets accepted into a program
Yeah.
and maybe the person doesn't have a placement yet, doesn't have an internship in the US yet, or it already has, but it hasn't traveled to the US yet. This is what you're asking, right?
It is. Yep.
All right. So for the ones that are not placed yet, we try to have at least bi-weekly communication just to
Great.
reassure them that sometimes even it depends. If they ask, of course, we will always answer. But if they don't ask, at least a bi-weekly communication just to reassure them that, we're working on the process and they're not forgotten. And if they have any questions, we are happy to answer them. Um, and of course, like once they're placed, and between placement and departure, in our case, that's a shorter timeline usually. We don't place people like 1 year out. So that's where communication gets faster, right? We really want to make sure to inform everyone about everything. And this can happen, like a lot of the young people like to just talk on WhatsApp, like chat on WhatsApp. And actually, I prefer that too because it's faster than emails. Of course, we have to draw boundaries there so they don't expect that we answer them day and night.
Yeah.
But once those boundaries are set,
Yeah.
I think, for example, a chat like WhatsApp can work really well for the ones that are like really close to departure and they might need to communicate really fast with us once they're in the visa process and so on. But also, of course, emails works, phone calls for the most important parts, like when they really have to understand, and I really have to make sure that they understand what their next steps are and what is expected of them. Then a phone call is due because you want to make sure that that person really understands. So yeah, I think communication is key. And even if something is not moving along as expected, let's say like a placement is takes longer than expected, communication works really well, and expectation management, just to make sure that everyone understands where we are at and they know what to expect. I think that makes people feel a lot more secure than not knowing what's going on with their application.
I think that is great. Well, first, that's great to hear. I love that you do that because that is providing a security for people, right? That is really important. So on the flip side of it, this is another question that is not up on the screen. But the idea that for people who are just looking into getting involved, or people who are like on the fence and they're not sure, or even people you are just now going out and starting to speak with in different countries, how often do you stay in touch, like push out those messages, right? So like once you've got folks and they're involved and you're either trying to place them or you have placed them, it sounds like you've got like a great communication cadence for people. But on the flip side, right, as you're getting more people interested, how often do you send those messages or those communications out there?
Okay, so for us, once they get in touch with us, then we send out a follow-up after 3 days, then again after 1 week, and then again after 2 weeks. That's the general. And after that, if they're not moving along, we kind of, don't not bother them, but don't communicate
Ah,
with them like on a daily basis. But they will be
yeah.
on our weekly, like on our monthly newsletter list. And we see people come back after 2 years. Uh, and a lot of some people move along really fast. Like they
Yeah.
they, they know they really want to do this. They were researching this and they're ready to go. Some people just heard about the program and it got their interest, but they're not ready yet. But they might come back, like even more than 2 years. That is actually happened a lot with us, that they will come back, and they've been getting those newsletters. Um, I don't know, but I'm here to learn. I want to see what works best in the industry. This is just like a schedule that we came up with, but I'm really not sure if this is the best approach. So I'm really here to learn and hear what is the follow up, what
Mm-hmm.
schedule or communication schedule for other people as well.
Yeah, you're like my like dream client, Jazz, right now because you're doing is wonderful. Like we're gonna talk about a few other ideas, but I love the amount of communication you're doing and that you're doing it on a consistent basis. Um, Before I keep going, does anybody else want to share anything or how they communicate with folks once they kind of start expressing interest? You don't have to. Okay. So, yeah, Gia, what you're doing is fantastic. So just that's great. I love the idea that you have a set of things you do, and that regardless, you keep them involved in newsletters kind of moving forward, right? That is a fantastic model. And I would say, and you may be doing it this way too, the other thing to just think about is doing it in a mix of ways, depending on how they've provided you either their contact information or what else you can do, and just making sure. And it sounds like you do this kind of once you've got folks in the door, but some of it's email, some of it is going to be the social followers, which they're probably following on whatever your preferred communication is. Some of it's going to be over whatever different types of text or things you do in your country. Like those are, you want to think about a mix of channels. More than likely, you're not going to be doing anything in like TV or radio because those are super expensive, super time investment types of things. But what are the low bar things? Are you doing webinars, once a month and inviting people to it? Like, what are this lower bar types of things you can do? Um, and even doing kind of like a series of things that, depending on the type of content you're putting out there, that aren't just touching base. But can you do a series of things like FAQs? Can you have a very small video of an alumni that you include in your emails that you're sending out to people? Can you do a series on what to expect from day one? And like Gia, just using you as an example, yours is a great one where you can say, right now you've been accepted. Here's what you can expect from us. You're going to hear from us on this regular basis. Here's about when we think we might have a placement. Here's the experience you're going to have. And you can use that as you're sharing your information out in the world. And you want to mix it up because you do want to have that regular conversation with people, but you want to change the types of things you're doing. So, for example, one of the folks I used to work with, their biggest thing is they would send out emails every Monday, but all of the emails would say the same thing. So after a while, it kind of just becomes something you delete because you're like, it's going to just tell me the same thing. It's just going to say the same. It's not even going to be any different. So trying to change it up is really helpful. We have zero attention span anymore, right? Like no one has an attention span. Kids certainly have no attention span. And so how can we hit them in these different types of ways? Is important. And it's kind of a parallel. If anybody's ever done fundraising or that type of thing on the call, it's a very specific parallel where you really have to have several different types of touches in order to get people involved. It's just the way it is. In fundraising, they say it changes, but right now it's like 7 different touches in order to get like a bunch of money from someone. You may not have 7, you may need 3, or you may need 8. I don't know, but you definitely need to have a few. And so it is just thinking about how can we do that in different types of ways.
Jenna, in the chat, several people
Yeah.
mentioned too that they primarily rely on email with
Yeah.
a little bit of phone, and then some have a regularly scheduled monthly office hour. Are you suggesting that they not stray, but they vary that formula, and instead of an office hour, bring in an alum to answer
Yeah.
questions, or instead of an office hour, do an FAQ? So vary that content as well, or is it better to have people know what to expect and have regularly scheduled things?
I would vary it. And that doesn't mean it can't be scheduled, right? You can say, I'm going to send out an email every Monday, but once a month, I'm going to have something that is audio or video based. That can be an alum, that can be a short PowerPoint on what to expect. It can be an FAQ where you can solicit questions from people, right? So you're sending it out and saying, we're going to have this FAQ video, webinar, or it can just be a recorded webinar. You don't have to do it live. It's up to your comfortability with that and what you can do, and solicit these questions from people so they feel invested. And so you can schedule it for yourself so you're not kind of like, what do I do today? But the type of conversation needs to be a little bit different, because people will just start to put on blinders after a while.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course. Okay. I am gonna ask just one person, I promise. If someone was to say to you today, like, what is the best story you've heard of all of the participants you've worked with or all the organizations you work with? What is like the most, like, what is the story you tell when somebody asks you about your success?
Trudy, Denise, Miguel, I know you all have some good
I
stories.
know you have
Valentina,
stories.
yeah. Marina, I know you've got some good ones. Can I just call on people? If so, all right, Marina, tell me, I know it's very late where you are. Tell me one really good story. While she's thinking, Michaela, tell me one very good story from Germany.
Well, I was thinking a
Mhm.
little bit because I'm not sure if I can remember the only one, you know? So the
Anyone.
top.
Yeah.
But we had a participant who came to the US on a scholarship.
Mhm.
So we work with lots of like foundations in Germany,
Okay.
and they try to, it's about a high school exchange program. And this foundation is working with like people from backgrounds who are not like financially very, you know, have a very good financial background. Or, for example, this young man, he had a foreign background, and he was actually the first one ever going outside of Germany at all in his family.
Oh, wow.
So
Yeah.
he got this scholarship, or part it was a part scholarship, and he also we got a video from him, and he was so happy and thankful. It was nothing special that he experienced, but it was the experience itself, um, which made it special. So I kept that in mind, actually. So because it was very touching. So
I love that.
We had a participant that wrote a song about his
Oh,
program, and wrote a song about his property, and then about the J1 Cultural Exchange Program. And he was a very good singer. And so it was actually a very beautiful song. And then we actually asked him to write so the first song was about his program and his training at his property, and then we asked him to write another song about the cultural exchange program, and he did. So he actually wrote two songs about his journey and his program and his property and his training. So um, it it was a really wonderful experience and story that he shared.
and
And his program's over, but we have that wonderful story and experience.
and then with like once you got that from him, what did you do? Not to put you on the spot, but what did you do with it once you got it? Like how did you?
So we shared it through our social media. We shared it with all of our participants and our other host properties, and then we shared it also with the Department of State as
Yes.
just something that's going on, with how amazing the program is,
Hmm.
and what's going on. And I believe we shared it some other areas as well, but and then we shared it with his host property as well, so they could share it with their team members as well, and their um, on their end as well. So we shared it on quite a few different avenues.
That's amazing. And I know you said that that program is kind of over now, but I would say,
His
oh, his
program is
program. Okay.
his
Um,
program, but he gave it to us and he said that we can use it, and yeah, he said we can use that as we need and want.
yeah, that is an amazing story of like a way to have something kind of in perpetuity almost, right? So you can use it and pieces of it for the future for depending on what you do specifically for recruitment and for other things. Um, even taking snippets of it, for different videos, you can use him almost as a spokesperson through his song, which is really amazing. So you shared it kind of in all the amazing internal places and also on social. Um, but just kind of don't let the story go, right? That's like a great example of like, this is great today, and assuming it's still appropriate, like even in a year, like this is a story you can keep for a really long time. And I'm not saying you did this, but like sometimes people will have a story and they'll share it like one time really fast to everybody, and then it kind of shelves itself, but like keep coming back to it. It's a great thing to use again and again. Um, Also because music is so emotional and so heartfelt for people. Um, I love that. Okay, I see Aaron and then Gia.
Yeah, so mine's maybe, I feel like mine's quite different than
Yeah.
the other ones that have been shared. So for us, or I guess, yeah, for us as experiment, so yeah, we do mostly student exchange, like I said. And I last year had the opportunity to get to attend one of our 4-day preparatory seminars, and I got to know a lot of the students very, very closely. And it was really special to get to see them, coming on the first day, none of them knew each other, leaving then at the end of those 4 days, so confident and ready for their exchange. And then even cooler was I then was on our New York orientation a few months later, and I got to see some of those students again, and they had their host families, and they were so excited to go abroad. And now that they're abroad, I still get updates from them. And some of them have filmed some videos for our social media. Some of them, or one girl actually, she just received this Harvard nomination for her grades. And getting right after the New York orientation, all of them sent their pictures with their host families at the airport with, the whole family was there, the dog was there, and they had these big signs, and just, the host families were so excited to have them, and getting to also stay in touch with them and having that, like, I think it's something that we really pride ourselves on, is that even though we are a large organization, we have that connection to our students and we know them. And that also means if issues pop up, you know, I'm like, okay, yeah, there's a host family issue. Okay, well, I know Josie, and let me talk to her. Let me talk to her parents, and it's not just some name that I'm pulling out of a hat that now I have to go talk to someone, and I have no idea who this person is. And that's, yeah, really special.
I think one that's amazing, and I want to see the picture with the dog. And so I think the other thing to think about, right, the story you just told. So just something to think about. You can also be your own best spokesperson sometimes in telling a story. So in what you just said, right, the words you were just using, you use things like, you have a connection to students, you get to know them. They're not just a name. And so a way to create some content, as we talk in a little bit about kind of where stories are, is thinking about you can do things like a voiceover using some of those words you just said and showing those pictures. So you have some video, but let's say you don't. Let's say you don't have video. Think about you also being like, I can hear the passion in your voice. I can hear how much you care. And also think about as you're creating stories, you can speak to them and do it in a way where you're showing participants, but you're speaking about how much you care. And so that is also something that will expand your reach. And people who are looking to trust you want to hear you too, right? They need to hear if people are talking to you, they also want to hear you. It's a trust issue. And hearing some of those things you're saying are really important. So just a thought as you're kind of moving through thinking about ways you can create content on a budget. That's a great
Yeah.
way to do it. All
Thank you,
right, I'm
Jenna.
gonna let Gia go, and then we'll move on to the last couple of slides because I just realized I don't want to run out of time. I don't want to answer any questions you guys have too. You have amazing stories.
Yeah, those were amazing stories. Thank you for sharing those. Just very shortly, I also have, amazing stories with people getting their driver's licenses in the US where they were not driving before, and the host business sharing this like really proudly with their followers, and then we shared it on our social media pages. Or another participant winning like weightlifting competitions. So we have many amazing stories, but also one relatable story I always like to share when I do a webinar or something similar is my own personal story. Because I also, like more than 13 years ago, but I also participated in the J1 visa program. And what I really love to share with people is that it's not just the experience that you have in that year or 1.5 years in our case in the USA. is also how it can change your life after and the friendships and the bonds you can make. When I was an intern in the US, I met a group of friends from all over the world. And actually, I got to visit their countries after the program. I've been to Taiwan, I've been to Germany, to Switzerland, to Lithuania, South Africa. And we are still continuing this tradition after like 13 years, and we are going to visit Dubai soon. We also went to a traditional wedding in India. So it's just, I always emphasize the fact that it's not just about the program when you're there, but also like how you develop personally, what connections you make. And it really enriches you in so many ways that you would not even think about. It's not just about the work experience or, studying abroad. It's really like what such a program can add to your life in long term. Thank you.
Oh, I love that's amazing. And it's so important and definitely like an incredibly important representation of like the entire program. So thank you so much. I'm going to go through just a few more slides because I want to get to the end and make sure we have time for questions and any other things you want to share. You do not have a lack of stories. I will say that, and that's really good as we go into this. So come on, turn. Okay. Oh, wow. My PowerPoint has stopped responding, of course, because that's what's going to happen when we're talking. So I'm just going to talk through the rest of this while for a minute while it comes back up. But the idea is you want to think about where you're pulling these stories from. So that's kind of what I was talking about for a moment when I was talking to Erin, right? So like, where are the different places that you can pull different stories from? And how do you get to those is a really important kind of thing to think about as well. And one of the ways to do that is to think of all of the different touch points you already have with people. So I had mentioned that Q&A earlier, right? Like you can ask other people to do Q&As. You can also ask them through places like email or a survey that you're sending on WhatsApp or something like that. And I hopefully you can see my slides again. And it is working. Love technology. So it's the best. But where are the places you can get different stuff? And you'll see, as Erin, see, I had the U in here with a big exclamation point. So you already helped me with this slide. Thank you. And so where are the different places you can gather stuff? And I think the example of having all of the students together, right? And then coming out of that experience more confident and feeling better about things, that is a great place. Even if you just like go home and write like 4 things down, right? Like here's 2 things that they said and 1 thing that I heard, and here are the names of them. Being able to kind of follow along with them and checking in and saying, can I share your story and your journey is really important as well. The other thing which I was starting to mention is where do you already ask information? Like, do you do a post-experience survey? I suspect you do. Everybody generally does, right? What was your experience? What can we do better? What would you improve on? That is a fantastic place to say, can you give us a couple of lines about your experience? Can we use that in our marketing or whatever phrase you appropriately use in the legal world? I did spend a few years with lawyers too, so I always want to remind folks of that. But you want to make sure you have the rights to share stories. And someone mentioned something about, getting the rights for that. That's really important. But if a low bar to entry is literally just asking places you're already asking and then saying, can I follow up with you to get a longer story? It's a really easy way to do it as well. And one of the questions is really important to ask and is really powerful is what made you choose us? And if there are any point of which they were like, we're not sure, we chose you and your program and we're really happy and here's why. That is the most powerful trust building story you can tell, right? It's the honest, raw truth. I wasn't sure. I was nervous. Here's what I did. Here's what I got out of it. And that will help combat a lot of the kind of stuff other folks are saying as well. And then these are just like tips on gathering stories. And I'll tell you my favorite gathering story tool that I use. But you do want to ask open-ended questions, right? You're trying to elicit that emotion and that feel. And I can hear, like everyone talking today, I can hear the emotion and the feel and the love, right? That's so important. The what changed part. That's what I was trying to explain before. You do not have to gather a story in a perfect way. This is like in my mind, when I go out and speak with organizations, this is like the most nervous anxiety piece I hear. Well, it doesn't look professional. I don't have the right lighting. The person didn't have the right makeup on. They weren't sure about what they were wearing. Like it's totally okay if your story is authentic and not perfect. I in a really small example, I work with a very localized camp where I live. They do work with children with high anxiety who don't normally get to go to camp because the kids can't be in a big group. They get nervous, they don't go to camp, they get stuck in their houses and isolated, and they're just this amazing, amazing place. You can see the transformation in these kids. But all the parents like were like, we want to tell the story, but we're nervous and whatever. So I went to an open house and I literally just grabbed my phone and I went around to each parent and I was like, give me one example of a difference this camp made for your child. And I walked around for 2 hours and I just grabbed different parents and I was like, and then we use that. It's not beautiful, it's not perfect, but it is raw emotion. And we have seen more traction from that than anything else we've done. It is really that truth you want to get from kids and from people and from everyone who's involved. Please get permission to share. Writing's great. Writing is important. What I did in that video situation, because I did not have time, nor did anyone want to sign a slip telling me that, I just made them say it on camera. Like, you have permission to share this in the future for marketing purposes for this camp. Ideally, it's in writing, but it doesn't matter if you don't have that opportunity. Just get it somehow, because you just want to know that you've got permission to share that story as well. I am going to skip that one and go to this for a second, and then we'll go back. I know I've mentioned this a couple of times, but the other thing that's really daunting to people is the need to tell lots and lots of stories, right? You don't. You just need a few. And the story, and even just the song and oh my goodness, the song about all of the experiences, you can use that story forever. It's great. And have that be one of your stories you use every year. That's really important. If you can get one story per quarter, maybe one of them is about your experience. Maybe one of them is about somebody going through the experience right now. Maybe one of them is an alumni. That's really great. Tell your story everywhere, right? So my parent story, we use it in slideshows. We use it in emails. We use it on social. We use it everywhere we can. She sends out little postcards that have the picture of like the families on it, and you can click a QR code and pops up a video. It's amazing. You can literally use the same story over and over and over again in different mediums. This is the part nobody likes. You do have to have what I call a storytelling champion at your company. Because the reality of it is, if somebody doesn't own it, they do not have to do all the work. But if somebody doesn't own it, it doesn't get done. It's unfortunate, but it's the way it works. And just having one person that their job is to say, we are going to do this, and then work within the organization to figure that out. Storytelling is so important, but you're doing a million other things every single day. You don't always think about it. So having someone whose job it is just to check in and say, hey, I know you were out today at a training with a bunch of students. When you're there, can you just can you get one video for me? Or can you write down one name, right? These quick little hits is what's really going to be important. But having someone to remember to remind you of that is going to be important. And then tracking it. So I think it was Gia that said you send out, different emails. If in those emails, like Carmen had asked, you're doing different things, right? And some of them you're talking about a webinar, and some of them you're asking a question. What resonates with people? Where are you seeing your opens and your clicks and your responses and people remembering it so that you can do more of that? And it's a little bit different every time. And asking people in those surveys, how do you want to get information from us? How do you want to hear from us is always important. And so I do a lot of that, right? How do you want to hear from us? What do you want to hear from us? What's important to you? And then trying to give them that information as well. That is all I have for now before my Q&A, but I know there's stuff in the chat. I see it. I just have to pull it up. Oh, I love videos. I love all these videos. This is so great.
Jenna, while folks are thinking of their questions, since I'm faster on the unmute than than others,
Yes.
you asked a very poignant question, right? What is your most relatable story?
Mhm.
For those who had trouble answering that, how can people evaluate all the content they have to know what would be most relatable to their target audience?
Absolutely. So, I'm going to give you two kind of separate answers for that. One is a non-scientific answer, right? So when you are reading through, I'm going to say, assuming you send out a survey, right, and you're reading through results from that, or you sit back once a year or twice a year and say, how did the year go? What can we improve? You think about the different students, you think about what's happening. So the non-scientific answer is what speaks to you, right? Because you're in it every day. That's really helpful. It's the what's the emotion, because more than likely, whatever the emotional draw to you is going to be the emotional draw to somebody else. So who's the one person that you saw their journey? Who's the, one whose family where maybe they called and said, this made a change in our lives, right? Because it just doesn't just it doesn't just have to be participants. It can also be families. It can be all kinds of things. Or is there an alumni that called and said, oh my goodness, I just got to travel with folks that I met? So like, who is that person and how does it react to you? The other answer is ultimately going to be kind of the longer term, asking people, like looking at the metric, like looking at your data piece, which is we did these four things, and this is the one that seemed to bring in the most people interest, the webinar that had the most people, right? Where the people not only came, but they stayed. That's a great example of it, right? So if you have a webinar, did people stay for a while? If you showed a video, did people watch the whole thing? If you sent an email, did people click it? It's a longer term answer, so it's not going to be a fast one. The shorter term is going to be the what relates to you. And that's why I think alumni are always a good bet, because if they are really usually have amazing stories to tell. My last answer to that, and I said there were two, but I just thought of another one, is if you are stuck, like so stuck, and you can't think of something, talk to each other. Like there's 33 people on this call. Like you have a lot of people in the network. Maybe find somebody else and talk to them and talk it out. Like I'm having this challenge. I'm having this problem. I can't figure it out. Like, what are you hearing? What are you seeing? Right? Like talk to each other. And that's always helpful. I do that in my daily life, right? With other marketing people if I get stuck on something. So I would say that would be another good option.
That's great. And we're a little over time, but if you all will stay, we have time for questions because and I appreciate everybody's chance for conversation. What questions do you all have? Things you're struggling with? I know we touched on the issue of trust and some of the headwinds that are coming as people look at the US right now. Other things that you all are struggling with, either unmute or put it in the chat. All right. Again, while you all are thinking, Jenna, you've talked both about using the same story a lot over the course of a quarter, but then also varying your content. How do folks know when to vary or when to stick with telling the same story over and over until you feel like it's worn out because you've heard it 37 times, but it's still new to most of your audience?
Absolutely. That's a really good question and a really good point. So I think that there's two ways to look at it. So one is you are telling the same story over and over again, but you want to tell it in different ways. And I realized that might not been super clear, right? So let's say I'm just going to use my camp story because it's my easiest option. I'm telling the story. There was a girl who went to the camp who had never socialized before. She had a lot of social anxiety. It was a huge problem. So her mom is telling the story about how this camp changed literally her whole life. Right now she goes to school, she's more social. So we used it in a few ways. We used it in an email series where we talked about specifically targeted parents who have children who have these challenges. And so we used it in a written series where we used a couple of quotes from the mom and a picture of them. So we also used it on social in a video, right? We used it there. We also put it in the kind of reel that they do at the beginning. So that's a changing, right? We had a couple different parents. So like you're not bored on that. All right. And then we also asked the mom to come speak at different things, to speak at a webinar, to speak at different things. So if you're thinking it's the same story, it's the same thing, but we're getting different pieces of it in different ways. It's a great example for it. And then you still have your stuff you have to get out there, right? We still have early bird registration and here's what's happening. So you're still putting out that other information, but throughout that month or couple of months, they're hearing kind of the same thing, right? Interspersed with your other stuff. So you're not stopping everything else you're doing, but you're using it in these different mediums. That answer your question?
It did. And what I also heard there is thinking about which audience you need at a key time. If it's
Correct.
recruitment season and you need to recruit people, you use the part of the story that is very recruitment-y. If
Yep.
it's maintaining a registrant who may be feeling nervous about coming, even though they had wanted to do the program, it's a different piece. So it's thinking, knowing your audience or what you want your audience to be doing, and then using the same piece to serve those different needs. Is that fair?
Yes. And I would say, and I mentioned it, I know literally in passing for a second earlier, but the other thing that is really, really smart, I think, and is the idea she sends out, right, which isn't feasible for everybody, but a postcard to everybody who's on the kind of mailing list that links to this information. So because there may be people where it's the grandparents or somebody older and they don't do social, they don't love email. Sorry, grandparents. But so they do a physical mailer too, as well, that kind of shares this for during recruitment season specifically. So I think that's a really good point.
And that sounds like a great thing for our folks who work with universities to get in the hands of advisors and faculty who are trying to be your conduits and your multipliers of information as well. And like the videos that Marina talked about,
Yeah.
using that as a gateway to hit a university and hit the faculty member and say, oh, this is your students,
Mhm.
whomever, and that from there. And I see some great stuff in the chat, but I also see some hands up and we're almost out of time.
Yep. I see Marina in the chat. I'll answer that one really fast and then we'll go to hands. Is that okay? So Marina, great point, because you don't want people to get bored, right? So I would say the way I do it, I schedule out a calendar. I hit my story really hard for the first like 2 months, and then I keep that story, right? So like our songs playing story, and then I just kind of weave it in the future over time. So it never goes away, but you're like hitting it hard at the beginning, and then you're kind of weaving it in forever. And if you have 4 stories, you can do that in a way that's not boring to people, right? You can like hit a story, do that, then hit another story and kind of do that. And I feel like I'm gonna have to show you guys a spreadsheet next time. But it does work. Because people are gonna also want to follow along a little bit. Like what's going on? Like what happened with that person? Okay, Gia, I see you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So my question is a little bit more specific. So what do you tell young people who are a little bit anxious coming to the USA right now because of,
Yep.
all the political stuff, what's going on? How do you reassure them, or what are things that we can tell them if they're a little bit concerned because of, all the things they hear in the media?
So what I would say is you can tell them as much as you want to tell them, and they're going to be able to believe you as much as they do. But if you need to have other people tell them, and that is not easy, right? So that's why I kind of harp on that alumni piece a lot, which is maybe going to be people who maybe they were in the US a few years ago. It's a different climate. I get that. But the people who are either here, and I say now, knowing it's a cyclical type of thing, but now, right? People who are experiencing, who are comfortable, who are happy, who are finding a good experience, their conversation is going to mean more. And if you can say, get on the phone with somebody, right? Or I'm going to share somebody's story with you, that it just is, right? You can talk as much as you want. People are still going to be nervous. So getting them in touch with other folks is going to be something. And Carmen, you had something in that too, it looks like.
Well, I was just going to say,
Yeah.
First of all, we're happy to amplify all of your stories, but another good piece of that too is hearing from the folks who are going to welcome them on the ground. So if you're doing a hospitality internship, if you can get to the host business, anybody on that team, to say, we're so excited to have students here or teachers in our classroom or high school students in our home or our school. And that I know a number of you have that content, but that's too where it's somebody else's voice saying, and particularly an American voice saying, we can't wait to have you here, that combats some of what they hear in the press, and it separates American policy from Americans, I think, in an important way.
Thank you. That was very helpful. It's me, Gia, again. I have another question. Had anyone do a social media scholarship? We've never done it, but I see some other agencies and organizations say that, okay, we give you like a small scholarship, not like a full scholarship, not like waiving all the program fees, but like something if you want to be like our social media ambassador and collaborating with us. I'm just very curious if how that works and what are your takes on that. I wanted to look into this deeper.
I don't know that I can answer kind of how other folks have been doing it or how to set it up. I would say the one piece for me is just be transparent about it too. Um, just in the transparency of letting folks on social kind of know that and just like little disclaimer somewhere. But I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of how that works like within the organization and if that's okay and you can do that, but I love the idea and concept. I would just say make sure you're transparent about it too.
Yeah, I know a lot of folks do that, and we can talk about that, and you all can talk about that together. I would say the key piece there too is having a plan. What do you do with all that content once you've got it? Because otherwise, you just have a bunch of videos that don't have that life that Jenna's talking about, right? Make sure you know, okay, we've collected all these videos and we've awarded them. Now we're going to use it in this way, in this way, in this way, because otherwise it's just more stuff in your inbox.
Yeah.
All right, friends, I hate to cut this short, but clearly there is an interest in talking about this. So what I will do on the capital side is see if we can get some other conversations for you all to learn and share. And maybe if Jenna's nice, she'll come on back and share her wisdom with us again. But I do invite all of you to stay in touch with each other, which we have some ways to do, and we're gonna be building more, to stay in touch with me and let us celebrate you and validate you and amplify the good work that you're doing. And I would encourage you all to do that self-evaluation. I go to a lot of your websites, and sometimes the stories are hard to find. So thinking about how it lives with different staff as well as one particular staff to really have that through thread about trust, about welcome, about the current environment, I think is going to help you guys stand out in a really positive way. So I am sorry we are so far over, but this was a really great conversation. Thank you, Jenna. Thank you to all of our attendees. I can't wait to talk about taxes with all of you next week. It will not be this much fun.
Have fun.
That's not fair. It will be different fun. And so thank you all, and look for my information with a summary of these great points, as well as the video up on our YouTube page. And I look forward to seeing you at a future Capital webinar. Thank you all so much. Have a great day.